What if I told you that your coping patterns, the logical good reasons why things don't work out, are actually defense systems keeping you from a deeper truth, your core wound? And what if that core wound that you've subconsciously been avoiding your whole life is exactly the place that your soul wants you to go? Hi, I'm Anne-Katrin, and I'm occasionally awake. I'm here to help you inspire your awakenings, heal yourself, and reawaken your life. Welcome and welcome back to my channel. If you've ever felt like you're doing all the inner work, but you keep hitting those same walls over and over again, then this is for you. In today's video, let's talk about why healing isn't what you think, and which 2 layers of truth are keeping you from your breakthrough. Essentially, I'm going to be talking about the real reason you're stuck, not the reason you've been telling yourself, but the deeper layer of stuckness that is related to your core wound and how unmasking that core wound is leading to your greatest power. First though, let's start with some basic terminology. A core wound is the greatest pain you've ever experienced that you haven't yet integrated or alchemized. Stemming from early childhood trauma, it is related to the situations and contexts that you adapted the lens of your unworthiness to. Meaning it is related to the situations, to the interactions and relationships that taught you to believe in deficiency, in limitation, in unworthiness, in not being good enough. So the basic principle is that we all want to know that we matter. We all want to know that we belong. We all want to know that we are loved and that we are worthy. That is the common denominator of human experience and human desire, making the subjective experience of not mattering, not being loved or feeling loved, not belonging, and not being worthy is an experience that most, maybe all people share in some form in their lives. The human reflex, the default, is to split from the pain. Pain that has no container to live in is split from the body and the mind. In short, our core wound is our core pain, the pain that's been buried the deepest. And it's buried with layers of earth that are reflective of the pain, of the generalized context, without actually accessing the context, because now the context is down there. And what we layer on top of the core wound is coping strategies, avoidance mechanisms, in order to move and act and think and feel in a way around the core wounding experience. There's not one layer keeping us from our core wound. There's 2. And that's where it gets tricky, because what most people are doing in personal development and on their spiritual healing journey is they're scratching the first layer. And they keep scratching and they keep scratching. But the thing is, you don't scratch and suddenly you break through onto the next layer. It is a shift in frequency. It is a shift in perspective that gets you from the first layer to the deeper layer, which is hiding your core wound. And you could maybe forever be working with the first layer without ever touching the second layer. But the second layer, the core wound, is where the breakthrough happens. I'm so glad you're here right now. So if you enjoy this, please make sure to like, subscribe, and hit the bell for notifications to become occasionally awake with me. Here's the beautiful truth of duality. From the core wound, from the core pain, our core desire is born. So looking at our deepest desires is a way to reverse engineer the core wound in order to start reclaiming a power that's been long lost, but is still waiting for you to unbury it from layers of avoidance. I personally believe that without integrating the core wound, we cannot reach our desire. We might reach some version of it, which then turns out to feel somewhat empty or not a reflection of the feeling and frequency we had associated with achieving that desire in the first place. That might be an indication that the core wounding as the counter force to that desire hasn't been integrated yet. Or the second scenario is, this is very common, that we know our desire and we try to get there and we keep trying and hustling and moving in that direction and just nothing's really working out. Either because we are not moving in the ways that we would actually need to be moving in order to reach that desire, that frequency, or because We are actually moving, but the 3D outer world is reflecting obstacles and hardships and putting us in situations and relationships that represent a roadblock on that journey. I personally believe that it's only from an integrated place that an authentic, wholesome, fulfilling experience of the desire in an actual high frequency can be attained. And that might sound frustrating or fatalistic, thinking that how am I supposed to get to that desire then, when there's probably a core wound I haven't even been able to face yet, apparently? How am I supposed to get there? We humans are masters at avoiding our individual worst-case scenario at all costs. What happens as a consequence is that we build a metaphorical safe around the emotions that haven't been processed yet. Here's the catch though. What happens as we move through life is that we avoid not only the contents of the safe, but the safe itself. Or to give you a second metaphor, imagine that your core wound was living in a castle. And we start to avoid not only the castle, but the moat around it. And that is the first layer. That is the layer we access. And then we keep moving through our lives, getting into personal development and psychology and spirituality and personal growth. And what most of us start doing is we work with a moat. And working with a moat does not even imply that you see the castle behind the moat. The truth is that we don't want to touch and feel what's in the safe. It's there for a reason. So what we do then is we subconsciously, in order to legitimize that safety measure, we find other stressors and other good reasons not to touch the safe, not to come anywhere near the safe. And we create a context that deflects the core wound onto another reason, onto another problem. And suddenly we are surrounded by all these reasons why we can't, why things don't work out. And we make that the problem. We dance around the moat, we watch the safe from the distance, and because we are not even aware of their presence, we are not even aware of what we are running from. We are not even aware of what we are avoiding until we dare to take a closer look, until there is no more running from. A therapist of mine used to call that the sideshows of life. So I did a lot of family constellations therapy in groups. Totally recommend that modality. And what would happen in these group settings is that a person would present a topic, a subject, often a problem they wanted to work on in that group context. And they described the situation, and most often that was why they came in the first place, why they were willing to pay money to be that vulnerable in a group. They were convinced that this is the core problem. And every now and then the therapist would listen and say, that's a sideshow. Let's look at what's really going on. And that might turn out to be something entirely different, something unexpected, something where the conscious mind couldn't even catch up in the moment, because it felt so far, as a protective mechanism. So integrating this beautiful metaphor into the context of this video, what I'm actually saying here is don't let yourself be consumed by the sideshows. We can do our spiritual practices, we can be into personal development, we might even be digging in the dirt already, and we might still be digging in the sideshow of our lives while missing the play that's playing on the main stage. Core wounds are created in the absence of a safe container that holds them. Children do not have the capacity to be a container for themselves. They rely on other people to reflect their pain and resolve and regulate their pain. However, if you're listening, you're possibly a grown-up. And the great news is you do not need an outer container anymore. Here's the most beautiful thing. Once we dare to take a look, to touch the safe, to remember the code and open it, once we build that bridge over the moat to enter the castle, once we get onto the main stage of our lives, we see how much of our pain, our avoiding, our running from has been an illusion. And the goal is to hold it in the way that it couldn't be held when you were a child, when the core wound developed. The goal is to become your own container. It is not only our responsibility, but our power today to hold the core wound ourselves, to face the parts of us that we have rejected in order to survive. And that is not a one-time thing. That is a whole other process. And no, that is not an easy one. Obviously not. It's like at the heart of all healing work, but it is at the heart. The more shadow we can contain in ourselves, not avoid, not cut off, not run from, but contain, the more we can let our light shine to reflect new experiences, healing experiences back to us. If this approach resonates with you and if you want to take the next steps on your personal healing journey, not bypassing, but gently walking yourself up to the main stage of your life, then know that you can work with me. You find 3 different levels of coaching and mentoring containers on my website. So if you're interested, feel free to check them out to take your next steps on your healing and awakening journey. Got any occasional awakenings yet? Now I'd like to hear from you. So please let me know in the comments below which of the 2 layers of healing work you are currently working on. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this, please like and subscribe. And if you want more insights on the 4 types of awakenings and how to experience them in your life occasionally, then visit me at occasionallyawake.com to inspire your awakenings. Bye.